Struthless is one of the most creative people I know on YouTube. His videos perfectly capture the creative experience and range from things like tips on productivity, creative block, to other things like niche little documentaries about fonts, those shitty corporate illustrations, and even bad tattoos. I think Struthless is one of the best creators on YouTube to watch if you're an artist, designer, or any type of creative really, and I was so excited to sit down with him and have this conversation. If you have any type of lifestyle that requires creativity, this interview will be for you. I'm so excited to share this one. Let's get into it. What were you doing right now? You're just running into a bunch of issues with your early work day?
Yeah, exactly that. So, man, like I feel like life is just a series of issues, and if it's not one thing, it's the other, right? So firstly, I was late to your podcast, and you've been incredibly patient and lovely and generous with your time. And the reason I was late is I couldn't get to sleep last night, and that's because I was too excited because I was working, and sometimes that happens. And so I ended up working till like 3 a.m. and then I looked at the clock. I'm like, oh shit! And so,
Oh, damn.
yeah. And usually I would have my daughter as my alarm clock, and she's weirdly reliable for waking up, and that's honestly the best alarm clock that money can't buy. But she and my wife are away, so that didn't happen. And so I was waking up to a normal alarm clock and blah, 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 blah. Next thing you know, I'm battling with the NBN, which is Australians know is internet for fucked. And then, I don't know, I was trying to like sort out some router shit, which made my dog think someone was at the door. So it's just, I don't know. I think life is chaos and it's reflected in every little aspect.
Is it weird for you now? Like, because I've watched a lot of your stuff from the past, and I know now you have the kid, and that obviously wasn't always the situation.
You know, as adorable and welcome as the interruptions are, there is something beautiful about getting that uninterrupted time back that I used to have before having her. And then I'd say without the negatives is probably just that little shock. We used to have this cat years ago, and there was this really, really sad moment because she had kittens and all these people went and bought the kittens. And for the next week or so, she was just walking around the house trying to find the kittens. And there was this kind of like sadness, this emptiness, this longing that this cat was experiencing, and we could see it firsthand. She was like going into rooms, into cupboards, just trying to find them. And that sort of displacement, I would say, is the negative side.
So even though you don't like even know how to expect it or necessarily like from like a obvious level, it's almost kind of like biological. Like you just feel weird a little bit.
Oh, definitely, man. There's that invisible string that binds you. You know, those cliches like, oh, your heart's now walking around outside your body. Yeah, all the cliches are true. It's fucking annoying, isn't it?
Yeah. I don't know yet, but I imagine, because everyone says that, even the people that I think would never say anything like that in my life.
That's the thing. It makes the biggest cynic into the biggest softie. And I mean, case in point right here, like I used to be such a freaking, I don't know, cut and dry cynic, and here I am, and I feel like I'm a freaking Hallmark card, dude. It's crazy.
Yeah, I guess it's good though if you start like that, because then you get to like a reasonable point where if you're already like that, you'll probably be way too like soft, and no one will be able to handle talking to you at that point.
That's it, man. Yeah, start as sweet tea, end up as molasses.
Yeah. What's like what I wanted to ask you, one of the first things is like, what is kind of some of your background just in general as like a creative and an artist before doing like video and YouTube, like, you know, you as a kind of like the Struthless persona?
Yeah. As in like, what did I make before I posted things?
Yeah.
Oh, so much stuff, dude. And not good. It wasn't good either. Like, you know, it's good that it's buried. It's good that I'm just slightly too old for it not to be buried as well. Like, so yeah. All right. In no order at all. I really did attempt music poorly. So I had sort of a solo thing that I was trying to do. I had a band. I had several bands. I had a very poorly sort out attempt at experimental music and concept albums, all of those things that you think are good ideas when you're 20, and then 3 years later you listen to them and you're like, man, my friends were being really nice to me. So I had a few of them, unless of course you're talented, in which case that doesn't apply to you. And well done. There was that. I tried to draw cartoons, but not very well. I was really fascinated by single panel comics and general children's illustration pretty much all my life. But emulating it was really difficult. I got this I grasped the humor, but the actual technical drawing, I was kind of like a little bit, I didn't really get for a long time. So music, drawing, pretty much tried everything. I did try film quite a bit, especially when I was younger. And that was like a lot of just like, I don't know, fucking around with a little camera. Advertising, another misstep in my history, wherein I thought it'd be a good idea to go get an ad job. And then 6 years later, you know.
Yeah.
And a few little, I don't know, pretentious holidays into writing, you know, where I'd be like, time to write a short story that's going to go nowhere.
Yeah.
Give it a shot.
On like Bukowski mode or something?
Yeah, dude, pretty much. Yeah. The people are flowers at last, baby. Yeah.
That makes sense. You were like doing all that different stuff, because I feel like even with what you're doing now, it's like kind of all over the place. And I was always wondering, like, not in a bad way though, like you do a lot, like you make a song, you can make a book, you could draw, you can do this. And I'm like, he had to have tried all these things in the past to be able to at least do them to a presentable level to where you'd want to produce like a whole video about it, you know?
Oh, thank you, dude. Yeah. I'm glad that the scattered world in here doesn't translate poorly.
Yeah. I think the way that like the most interesting people are able to take that kind of scattered nonsense and somehow compile it into something that like a normal person can just digest without, if it gets a little too crazy though, it's almost like what's going on. But if it's not crazy enough, I feel like it's boring, and that's like bad art. So it's a weird kind of line you got to mess with.
I agree. And it's a hard thing as well, because like I feel like the line's actually pretty fine. And I might be wrong there, and that might be a little limiting belief of mine, but I feel like it's so easy to either make wallpaper or make like psycho shit that nobody wants to look at. What about you? Were you scouted? What did you do before this?
I don't know. I mean,
yes, you do.
Let me think. I don't know. There's no really like, I don't know how much of it is like a before, because
you're young, aren't you? How old are you?
I'm 25. So with like video stuff, that's mostly like design centered, and you know, I'm not fully doing the podcast, but you are one person I want to interview along with a few other people to bring back that format as like more of a, I also think I need to do the other things still to inform like some of the stuff on here. So I really have to try my best to split it like 50-50, 60-40. So I don't know. I don't have a lot of before, just because this is like the past few years is the first thing that I've really gotten into, and kind of, I think I'm figuring out what I like, but you know, who knows? I might go off and try to make a band or write. Or whatever.
maybe this is the before. Who knows?
Yeah.
I hope not. Exactly. I feel like you're doing great.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. When did you feel like? Because I was looking back at some of your old stuff. I found your videos through more of the, I guess, newer things where it's just like overall creativity, and then going into the catalog, you see that it's like a lot more just about like art or drawing, or like, let's do these challenges, like draw this in this many styles. What made you want to shift to like a more broad, like overall creativity from like art itself?
I think it's just closer to who I am and closer to what I want to put out on the internet. And it's fun to have fun, I guess, especially with the videos that you're talking about. For context, for the people who haven't seen them, it's basically like just drawing style challenges, like where you pick an illustrator, and I like to say like a few little words about the illustrator just in case anyone's curious, and then just give a shot at emulating their style. And I feel like, to give myself a tiny bit of credit, I did okay at about 30% of the illustrators, then 70% were just so out of reach, but I was just still giving it a shot anyway, and I kind of like that ethos. But I guess that was a gateway drug for me, and hopefully for the audience to be talking about some bigger concepts. Because like whatever anybody puts online, it's only ever a small slice of them, and the people who I guess want to share more have to expand that slice, because nobody is drawing challenges 24/7, and eventually, you know, you want to just keep peeling back the layers, and you can't do the same thing forever unless you're a robot, in which case, that'd be awesome. But I'm not a robot, despite the rumors.
Yeah. That's the hard part, is I feel like when you figure out something that works, like you want to do it from like the standpoint of like the validation. But every time I find something that works, I'm like, all right, well, that works. So now I have to do something differently, because it's like, I don't want to do the same thing twice almost.
Completely. And it's like, and the temptation's there, especially if it's one of those things that quote unquote goes well. And then you're like, yep, there it is, the thing that I'm riding to the top, baby. But of course, like, you know, the magic is in the fact that it was new, not in the fact that it was it.
I think that is what it is, because it's never the thing I'm most proud of that does the best, which is also interesting.
It's always the way, isn't it? You're like, kind of shot the fish in the barrel there, didn't I?
Right.
Low hanging fruit, basically on the floor.
Were you kind of worried though when you first did that? Like, oh, my audience is only like about art itself, and they're not gonna like this more like grand idea stuff?
Not really. I think like that sort of stuff for me was almost the second iteration. Like if I'm to think about me putting things online, that for me was almost the second stage, because the first stage was these very Australian-centric comics, and they were really, really fun. So it was just like single panel comics, and all the jokes, you had to be from Australia to get them. Some of them I guess you didn't, but most of them were very like domestic in that sense. And so I was having a great time, and I never really had aims of getting bigger than Australia, which is probably an Australian thing. Quite a lot of Australians don't, and it's also sort of like culturally discouraged, you know, like keep it in the family, boy. But then one day I did one of those drawing challenges. It was SpongeBob. I remember it. I was like so bored, and I put it online, and all these people were like, oh, crazy. I don't think I was even really posting much on YouTube at the time. I think it was just Instagram. And then all these meme pages started reposting it, and I was like, what the hell? And the meme pages they were from America, they were from England, they were from like all over the world. And it sort of like blew my mind that that was even a possibility, which again, probably like one of those little cultural barriers. And just a personal limiting belief. But then I was like, maybe I'll do that. So already those drawing challenges felt like an expansion. And because I knew that I could change from, you know, cynically roasting the country that I'm from and that I love to, you know, exploring cartoons and illustration and all this other stuff I love, I was like, well, it's a hop, skip and a jump to just evolve again and just, I don't know, be Madonna, but bald and not as talented.
Were those like initial, I guess, like let's say the SpongeBob one or one of the other ones where it's like drawing this in this style, was that the first kind of concept from like a video series wise that you felt kind of blew up like your YouTube channel?
Nah, there was a different one, and it was in 2018, started 2018, and again, very Australia centric. But and I remember this is sort of like the first time that I'd really made video as me online. I had this idea, and I was trying to draw it as a comic, and the idea was so bad. I mean, like, so I used to be a bit of a rat bag before I was a reformed rat bag. So the idea was basically like cocaine is quite expensive in Australia, and a lot of things are generally expensive, like the general, I don't know, price hike. And so at the time, cocaine was going for about $300 a gram, which is ludicrous, especially to hear you as someone who lives so close. You know, well, you live in California, right?
That's crazy. That's like times 5.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's cooked. Anyway, so I was like, hang on. There's a point when doing cocaine in, say, Sydney, where it would actually be cheaper to get a flight to Mexico buy your cocaine and then fly home. And then I was like, oh, that's kind of like conceptually funny and every Australian will relate and or every dirty one. And then I was like, but it was too many steps to communicate it in a comic. So I was just like, oh, screw it. I'll just turn on my camera. And I had a camera because I was working like, you know, freelance sort of camera stuff as any, I don't know, young person with tattoos does. And so I turned on the camera and then I just basically set it and I posted it online and yeah, man, I don't know, people just really dug it. So it kind of struck a bit of gold and I was like, woo, new format just dropped. And so I made this series of unethical life hacks that sort of followed. And they were all kind of real piss take of like the science genre. I don't know if you guys have that term, piss take, kind of like a stitch up or like a like a satire.
Right, yeah, like a spoof or whatever.
Yeah, sorry, I've got to translate in lifetime.
Yeah, I feel like you guys especially have such a unique like verbiage for certain things, but I feel like the context is usually so strong that I think I know.
Yeah,
sometimes I still don't know. So it's interesting. And 'cause, like, what do you think were the biggest challenges coming from like an artistic or comic type background to doing this like video format rather than someone who just wanted to be like a content creator or something, you know?
I don't know, because I think I actually felt more comfortable editing film than I did drawing. In fact, I think drawing was probably my weakest skill out of all my skills. And I think that's why I chose it, because that's just kind of how I'm wired. But editing, I've been like editing since it was Final Cut Pro 7, kids. No, but I have, man. No, like I've been obsessed with editing long before I was into anything else. Just because I liked it. I liked it so much. So that was natural for me. Plus, it was also like a freelance job that I had. Like I did music a lot better than I did drawing back in the day. So honestly, it felt less like a challenge and more like I was opening up to the idea of showing my actual self, which I guess that was probably the challenge, like, you know, being a face on the other side. Because yeah, I think the mindset that I had was like, all right, if I put my worst foot forward, if it fails, yeah, it ain't me, baby.
yeah, that's the best defense mechanism for yourself online, because you're like, I didn't even care about it.
Yeah, whatever, dude. I freaking wrote it the night before, so I'm actually really clever. Yeah, you just don't know it.
That's funny, because I would have thought, you know, you started doing that stuff, you know, informed by like the art and comic and illustrative type stuff, because at least for me and a lot of other people I know who make videos on YouTube about art and design or anything in that world, we're like trying to learn the video part, not the other way around. And arguably that part's definitely, I think, harder, because I never knew how hard it was to edit videos or make YouTube videos till I started doing it.
Holy smoke. Yeah, no, like I actually haven't even conceptualized the order at all, because like I freaking adored editing. What was the gap or the leap like for you?
I still feel like with the other question, like I'm in it. I'm nowhere near where I want to be with editing, but you know, when I first started doing shit like this, it was pretty like bare bones, because I was doing like strictly in software stuff or like tutorials or whatever, like things that didn't really require too much like editing or storytelling other than cutting out some of the boring bits or whatever. But actually realizing like you need to edit for, you know, people to be engaged and actually use B-roll and using my skills in graphics to like help that with the editing. I don't know. I still think it's hard. Like I think editing is such a valuable skill, and I think if anyone wants to learn something nowadays, it's definitely like a good one, because a lot of people don't want to do it, but they want it done well, so you can hand it off to people. But even though I don't feel like I'm very good at it yet, I can't imagine being able to dictate it to someone either, though. That's the weird thing.
I know what you mean.
Seems hard.
Yeah. Fascinating. Plus, because you're a graphic designer, you've probably got that, this is my assumption, but like the perfectionist streak, particularly visually.
Yeah, a little bit. And I've really had to, you know, one video I'll get into that mode and then it just does just as good as when I put 80% effort. So then I get really sad because it took me 2 weeks when I could have took me one or whatever. And then
sometimes the scale is even more tipped.
Right. Or sometimes you don't put on the worst feeling though is when you're like, all right, I'll just do the 8 because you had that plan for like the docs and then you said you got a little bit kind of, you know, off the path of that or whatever. Do you feel like you're still kind of in that feeling, or now you're back in like this inspired mode and ready to go?
Thankfully, I'm in option 2, but option 1 was pretty bad because I'll just give you the full story for anybody who has a bit of Schadenfreude. Here's some failure for you. Live unvicariously through me. So yeah, at the start of the year, I tried to sort of start this documentary series where I was going to be ticking off sort of big bucket list items. And I filmed a whole bunch and I had all of these ones planned. Released one, awesome. Released the second one, awesome. The third one, I ran into some serious trouble. And I can't really say what happened, but you can work it out pretty easily if you look at the clues. There was a couple of things out of our control that sort of took the whole project and really just, I don't know, stopped it, just like punctured the tires of it. And and that sort of spun me out quite a bit. Plus there was a few other things that were going on. I was in like a bit of another situation. I was having a few health problems, like all of this XYZ, nothing too fascinating, but all of it culminated in, I don't know, this sort of like asteroid that hit my brain.
And once you kind of get hit with that, the momentum gets stopped. It's kind of hard to restart it, right?
And then every day that passes isn't the momentum coming back, but you kind of guilt tripping yourself for losing the momentum. And so that's what was happening for me. And I'm like, damn, turns out I am the worst. That took longer than one sentence, but yeah, that's my
It's all good. It doesn't need to be one sentence. That's all good. From like wanting you to do good standpoint, I'm like, damn, that sucks that all that stuff happened. But from like selfishly, since you seem like someone that is so on it and like about these things, especially because your videos come about this stuff from more of like a meta standpoint, like talking about creation and the process, seeing that happen to you makes me feel like that sucks. But also if it can happen to him, then I shouldn't feel too bad about it because I thought he had it all figured out, type of thing.
Oh man, that's music to my ears, dude. Like genuinely, because I don't know, that's the only silver lining of failure when you share it and make somebody else not feel so alone. So that's really freaking lovely to hear. Thank you, genuinely.
Yeah, thank you. And I think I remember watching the first few too and thinking, I don't know how he's gonna keep up with this production value, because before you were more of like a talking head like setup, and now have this whole camera crew and you're out in the world and everything.
Yeah, dude, that was sort of one of the problems, was the sustainability of it in that exact way. So the production value was just too ambitious, too high, too audacious. But I'm very proud of what we did make, and I've sort of spun it more recently because I still have that energy and I still have that dream.
Right.
I think we've all got that dream about ticking off bucket list items. And so then I was like, all right, what's a more manageable, what's a more realistic bucket list item? What's something that's like more within my wheelhouse? And I started thinking about that. And that was actually sort of what got me out of the rut, was landing upon something that I could actually know, man. But I guess this is sort of like, when we come back to it, that thing that I was saying before about we'll call it the Madonna effect, like the fact that you got to change before people want you to change, and you got to sort of find whatever the truth is that you're having at the moment and express that. And then hopefully if you can actually capture that authenticity, there's going to be some sort of continuity with all the stuff that you made before. But if you instead were more to think about a brand and servicing a brand, like you risk outgrowing that brand and then just being fake at some point. And so I think that's my view of that process.
For me, my biggest thing holding me back to like a brand is like the design aspect of it, because not only is what I do like mostly graphic design, but also the audience. So sometimes I feel when I do something that's a little more just about me or storytelling or some kind of maybe something similar to what you would do, like more anyone that's in a creative thing can do. It doesn't always do the best. And I'm always like, yeah, it makes sense because they all selfishly, the audience always wants something that's going to directly benefit them. And if they're used to getting all this design, but I'm trying to always pepper it in and never fall all the way into like, so that way one day when I want to do something even crazier, they're not like, what the hell? Like, what is this guy doing? Every video before this was like a tutorial and now he's talking about his life or whatever. So I'm trying to like, what's the word? Like wean people into other things. So that way it's not as jarring maybe in the future.
Sugar and medicine.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's scary.
Where do you want to take it? I
don't know. I think, yeah, I do want to build more of the, personality into it rather than just like the craft of like graphic design or art, because I do think it's not only more sustainable, but it's more like, yeah, like the people I like the most, it's almost doesn't matter what they do, is I want to see them doing it type of thing. And I want to get stuff to that point because I don't know how long I'm always going to want to be doing design stuff, at least from a content standpoint. So I don't want to feel like one day I'm just having to do it. Like this is another job. So yeah, I'm trying, everything ends up feeling that way a little bit, but as much as I can try to remedy it, I'm gonna,
My mum is quite cynical for a preschool teacher, but she has this quote, if I complain too much about work or something, she goes, she's like, well, you could see it this way. Everyone hates their job eventually, so just do whatever makes money. And I'm like, oh, goddamn.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I guess the hating of the job sometimes could happen in any scenario. I disagree with my mum a bit on that one. Mm-hmm. But to bring it back to what you said, I think what's cool is personality, I think, is eventually going to be the only thing that matters. You know what I mean? Especially as like AI takes all anything that's kind of functional. It's all just going to be a personality economy.
Yeah, that is true because, not to be too nihilistic, but I'm not confident that I, almost like I beat it, like I got past the revolution or something. Because at some point it seems really discouraging to be like a student or something and be like, I want to learn this skill. And then they're like, why would you learn that skill? We can do that in 4 minutes with this algorithm or whatever. But you can learn to talk about that skill or like be someone that is involved in that skills like community or something. And I think that's where like not only personality from like a comedic or friend or like emotional level, but just from the fact that you're a human and not like a machine.
They ain't taking that from us.
Yeah, exactly. What's the stuff that you do with the like Struthless Studio aspect of your whole business? Because I was kind of looking at, your Instagram and your YouTube channel, and then I see that and I didn't know if you were still like practicing, like creating stuff for clients like that, or what that business kind of is about.
A little bit. We sort of slowed it down this year, and that was just kind of, mapping what looked like a recession. But yeah, for a while we were doing a lot of animation, and that was really cool and really fun, and we had a lot of clients there. But the thing that we were really trying to do was get a show off the ground and get some sort of show sold to networks. And we did that classic thing where you go and like, you got your ideas and you pitch them from this network to that network to that network. And everyone is almost going to say yes. They're almost going to say yes. And then there's some reason they don't. And you're like, oh, okay. And that story gets confirmed a little bit. And like, I don't want that to be the story that I have around this sort of thing. But that did happen a lot. And I guess it was sort of like suffocation by encouragement is how I would describe the process of pitching an animated show to networks. And eventually I kind of just had to make a call. I'm like, well, not getting any younger. Do I want to put more energy into a maybe, or do I want to double down on the things that I know are definites, like writing more books and making more videos? And so I made a tough decision. And honestly, the that's been quite a recent tough decision. You're looking at me literally like weeks into that tough decision. So,
really?
Hey, I'm a new man. What's good?
You mentioned like you're doubling down on the video stuff and the books and maybe some other things. You've kind of done pretty much, it seems like most things, like even before you told me about your past like life as making noise music or and all that stuff or whatever you were working on, just from your online persona, I've seen you do art, books, write that country song, video. What art form medium do you think overall is like the most rewarding and the one that you would choose like if you had to shut everything else off?
Moderately reliable documentary making about topics that are so bizarre but fascinating as all hell, but overlooked. And the
like
reason,
like the fonts video, would
exactly,
that be like an example?
Yeah. So like, the fonts video and the ignorant tattoos video. I made one on the corporate Memphis design. You know, the sort of freaking globo.
No gender, no body.
Yeah.
Like
tiny little
fluid.
heads, the fucking all that shit.
Yeah.
So I did a deep dive on that, but probably that because for a few reasons, and I'd want the narration of them to be how'd you say, like mildly memoir-y, mildly reliable, still like unreliable narrator documentary, like half fact, half memoir, perfectly. I've never heard it done better, and I'm just obsessed. So probably that. I think it's like storytelling about things, telling stories about weird creative rabbit holes that I think people should probably, I don't know, dive into with me. And that's actually what I'm about to do. I'm starting a whole freaking series on them.
So that's what you were mentioning to me?
Yeah. Send you a message about it. So by the time this podcast comes out, I will have launched it. I haven't quite got a name, so this will be potentially what it's called, but I'm thinking about calling it Campbell's Alphabet Soup. And basically what it is a series of 26 different documentaries all about a different topic that start with a different letter of the alphabet. And every single topic is in some way related to creativity and like, you know, the human experience of like making stuff and generativity and philosophy and curiosity and all the cool stuff that I really, really like. But it's also about something that's just like weird as shit. So for example, A is going to be about all of the artworks that we've sent to aliens. So I don't know if you've ever gone down this rabbit hole, but there is like quite a bit of art that we have shot into space, either physical art, like, you know, everybody knows like the Voyager or the Pioneer plaque, or like art that we've put into an electromagnetic ray and shot that across the space, like, you know, like almost like a radio signal. And we shoot them in exoplanets and like solar systems that we think could harbor life, just in case there's an alien on the other side receiving it. And what's really cool is when you look at these artworks, you actually cult leaders make a whole lot of music. And then ultimately by the end, we'll get to 26 and there'll be a Z one or Z in the non-Queens.
Wow. I mean, are you going to, is your plan for that to be kind of your next 26 videos on YouTube?
Yeah. And like, this is also me kind of honoring the idea of the bucket list as well, because this has been a bucket list plan for a very long time. And it's one of those things I'm like, all right, if I was dying, or less dramatically, if I was quitting YouTube, this is the bang that I go out with. So I'm like, come on, dude, it's now or frickin' never. Do it now or just like stop thinking about it. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at here. And also just because I've gone through so many changes lately, like, and particularly structural changes with my own company, and like I said before, like making the decision to commit more to one thing than the other. I think, I don't know, a transition is a really good time to, in my opinion, give that pipe dream a shot. Right.
It's funny to think that potentially in the bucket list format that whole thing would be like one video or something. Let's make 26 documentaries.
Yeah. Let's spend half a year. But I think it's more achievable than going out somewhere, because like if I'm to think about, because like when you think about making anything in any kind of sustainable quality. It's the stuff that really doesn't cost you energy but gives you energy. And for me, I am such a freaking obsessive nerd, which I know I don't have to say. That probably just comes across intangibly, but that is who I am. I like just get obsessed with subjects. I bore myself when I know that this is who I actually am. I am a freaking, I don't know, the dude who just fucking mainlines Wikipedia. Like, I think we all are. But yeah.
I really like the idea that the format of it where you said like, you know, mildly reliable or whatever, the information, because it feels like you're telling me this thing and I'm like, did that really happen? And you're like, I think so. You know, that's like
dude.
kind of the fact. And because most people, it doesn't really matter if it's true or not. They're not going to check. They're just going to go their whole life telling someone that same thing. Anyway, so it's like the beauty of it, you know?
Yeah. And of course, that'll hopefully be like apparent in the video. You know, that I'm like, look, I'm a friggin' idiot. Cause I am like, you know, I'm not the dude who's sending stuff into space. I'm the dude who's like reading articles about the things that we send into space. Like, I ain't the smart guy in this equation. I just want to talk about it.
What's the process like for, you know, creating one of those type of videos from maybe the research stage to like the actual final publish?
Yeah, it's exciting pretty much start to finish. So I've built a process around it. I got back my editor who made the fonts and the ignorant tattoos video. So working with him again, and his name is also Cam, which is funny and confusing sometimes, but lovely.
Yeah.
But the process is basically like the idea. There is the idea, right? And like the idea is hopefully the focus and the thing that informs it. And I find like if something's feeling overwhelming, what I'll do is just narrow the scope, just keep narrowing the scope every now and then. Because like I'll take the Art for Aliens one just because it's the most recent one that I made. So originally that was going to be art that we've sent to space, but oh my God, there is so much art that we've put in space. And I was like, gee whiz. Did you know, like, here's a cool fact for you. The first ever picture that we sent to the moon was a dick pic.
What?
Yeah, dude. So it was this tiny little thing. It's about this big. It's like the size of your thumbnail. And it's 6 pictures that were drawn by a couple of artists in the 60s. And the top left was drawn by Andy Warhol. And he claimed it was his initials, like an A and then a W, but like it is explicitly a dick. Anyway, there's a bit of contention as to whether it was actually sent to the moon, but most people tend to agree that it was. So yeah, first thing sent to the moon was a dick pic. But here's kind of where the research explodes, because like quite a lot of art has been put into space, not for aliens, but just for the sake of art being in space and like, you know, creating like space galleries and like rich people shit, right? So then I was like, all right, well, this is blowing out into like a fucking 10-part Netflix series. And so I'm like, all right, we need to narrow this scope. And so then of all of the art that we sent into space, there's like some art that is, you know, like serves purpose A, purpose B, purpose C. And one of those purposes was communicating with extraterrestrial life, whether it exists or not. And I'm like, well, that is, I don't know, a fucking little existential delight. So dive right into that. And then I'm like, all right, now we've got a scope. Now we have an angle. Now there's like potentially like a point I can make. And I don't know, like there's something more than just talking about art, because it becomes like a story about philosophy, right? It's a story about humanity. It's a story about like being alone in the universe, whether we are or not. It's a story that I think a lot of people are talking about ever since like the David Grush whistleblower and the Congress hearings.
Right.
And so like, yeah, so that's how it starts. And then I'm like, all right, there's got to be a story here, right? Easiest story you can tell is like when it comes to documentary is chronological, just like history start to finish. But it's not always the best story you can tell. And like, I find history is a really good place to begin because it gives you a really nice context. But after a while, like after, let's say that's act 1, is kind of getting you to the point where the craft is like, what would you call it? Like legitimate, like it's a legitimate practice. It's not just like people taking like literal moonshots.
Yeah.
And then you've got act 2 and act 3 in the story, like if you just to think about it in simplest terms possible. So we've set the stage. Now we need almost something to go up and then something to come down, and then something to come up again. So like for me, for this particular documentary, I wanted to go up with Voyager, because like, you know, the golden record that's on the Voyager record.
Yeah.
On the Voyager probe, sorry. Because I think that's like just a beautiful, idealistic, pure slice of humanity. It's so optimistic. It's a beautiful story, right? But then after that, I really wanted to bring it back and have like the dark part and the reality that maybe they won't find us and maybe we'll all die and maybe these are the only artifacts, like just a fucking hangover of a blip of life, just like sailing forever, a souvenir of our fucking time on this planet before we killed ourselves, man. So from that, I pulled it back and I found these other stories. There's this one story about this artist who basically made all of these photographs and put them into space in this satellite that was orbiting the Earth and will orbit the Earth long after we're gone, basically until the Earth is no more. And those aren't made to find aliens. They're made almost as like a cautionary tale of why we killed ourselves. And so I'm like, well, that's got to be the next story, right? And so, so that becomes sort of like the start of my act 3. Like, and then you try bring it home with the message and what the whole thing means and why it's...
Or research, scripting, recording, editing. Are you doing it more like back and forth or are you figuring every single thing out from the beginning and then handing it to like edit or whatever?
Sometimes a little bit of both. Best case scenario, I think about everything in chunks. So I'll finish the script, then start recording, finish the recording, then start the edit. Worst case scenario, I'll just go back and forth, and usually that ends up making a pretty shitty product. So yeah, the more I can do before I press record, the better. Ideally, I'd have like the script locked off. And then the script usually, like I'll write it start to finish, but once the camera's on, my mission isn't to hit every word, it's to explain the point. So it's kind of like, it almost just becomes like a guide. And then I know that as long as I've got the in and out, like I want to talk about this and I want my transition to be this into the next part, this is the meaning that I want, then hopefully it'll be more engaging than if I'm just to use it as a teleprompter.
So you said that you got the guy that was editing the ones that are similar to this format already. Do you edit the other videos or what's the setup like for that?
Yeah, a bit of every, I edit quite a few of them. He edited a lot last year. I've had various editors for stuff like that marathon one, for example. I edited that one. That was really fun. And then I got like just various contractors who'll do like little bits of animation here and there.
I see.
The recent stuff I've edited a lot of. My friend Billy, shout out Billy. He edits a lot. Yeah, so I don't know. I used to pretty much exclusively edit myself, but then I think as your hunger grows, you got to start outsourcing stuff, which is difficult.
Since you said that was kind of your like favorite part from the beginning, or like the passion, like back in Final Cut or whatever, is that hard for you to like not do it yourself, even though you know it doesn't make sense time-wise?
Yeah, for sure. I think at first it was really, really hard, especially because like I think most people when they start delegating go through that thing of like only I can do it or I do it perfectly and everybody else is just a cheap replica. But then you find the right editor and you're like, oh, I actually am not very good at this and this person's way better. And they actually add stuff and they get it and, you know, it's their craft more than it's your craft and that's beautiful. But it also gives me time to focus on the other thing that I love the most, and that's writing. Oh my God, man. Writing and researching. Like, I could do that all day and I'll be a pretty happy man.
The last thing I did want to ask you, but I already did, was about the new series. But I'm glad that you answered it. I'm glad that you answered it long enough because I'm excited to see that. And I think I'll definitely make sure that stuff's out before we put any of this out. But other than that, unless there's anything else you wanted to talk about, I appreciate you coming on, man, and chatting with me. It was fun.
Thanks so much, man. I guess I just wanted to ask you a question, which is like, where do you see all this going? What's your predictions for young Jesse? Like, what's happening, brother?
Man. Let's see. I think that Oh shit. I don't want to hit the mic. That's not was not my plan. I think that I will do the YouTube stuff for at least the foreseeable future in tandem with my design career, because I almost value them just as much as each other, and the YouTube one's definitely growing like a soft spot in my heart. Like I like it more than I ever thought I would. I thought it would be like a side thing into the, you know, career of design. But as they both grow together, I think I want to try to keep them somewhat cohesive, but then also have the flexibility, like I said, to branch out in the video space and still practice design independently. And then maybe, you know, ideally it would be cool to work with like a little cool Avengers team of like designers in a studio in that world, and then only have YouTube as like just some other creative video outlet, you know, on the side. I think that's where I'll say right now, but who knows? I don't know. Hearing your story, I could change my complete mind in like 5 years or whatever.
Oh man, I hope you do for your sake. But I mean, like more just because change is exciting. But I like that vision. I like that vision a lot. I think that's beautiful.
Oh yeah, dope, man. Well, everyone, go check out Cam if you haven't. Struthless on YouTube. I'm sure if you're watching my videos, you've seen his before. And thank you again, man. It was great.